Welcome to the deep dive. We are just incredibly glad you could join us today.
Absolutely.
Because whether you are, currently prepping for some high stakes meeting, or maybe you're out for a long morning walk,
Or you just have this intense burning curiosity about the mechanics of how the world actually works.
right. If that sounds like you are in exactly the right place. Our mission today is a massive one.
It really is.
We are diving deep into some truly fascinating research, specifically part 2 of a comprehensive analytical article prepared by the Hale Institute.
And just for context, that stands for the Human and AI Learning Institute.
Exactly. And part 2 is quite the pivot from the first section.
It's a phenomenal piece of research to unpack. If you were with us for our deep dive into part 1, we spent a lot of time mapping out the true intrinsic value of an individual.
Right.
But today we're shifting gears to look at a profound topic of social discourse. We are exploring how materialism doesn't just affect our bank accounts, it fundamentally distorts human purpose.
And what I love about this source material is that it forces us to look past the cliche version of materialism.
Yeah, the pop culture definition.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about a cultural trend where people buy too many expensive shoes or, upgrade their phones every 6 months.
Right, it's so much deeper than that.
The Hale Institute researchers approach this as a core distortion of the human spirit. They are pulling from developmental psychology, educational theory, and some highly illuminating spiritual insights drawn from the Baha'i writings.
Which is a global faith tradition, yeah.
Right. And having you here as our analytical guide is going to be crucial today because we really need to navigate some incredibly deep psychological waters.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a compelling lens because it completely challenges our default assumptions. We are so used to treating materialism as an economic problem, or maybe an environmental problem.
Sure, overconsumption.
Exactly. But viewing it as an identity problem, a psychological and spiritual distortion, it completely changes the conversation.
It really does. So let's start with a concept from the research that just completely blew my mind. It's this myth of the natural materialist.
Oh, this is such a crucial starting point.
You hear this narrative everywhere, right? If you ask a random person on the street, they usually say, well, humans are just naturally greedy.
Yeah, that we are biologically wired to hoard resources.
Right. But the developmental psychology data presented here kicks off with a massive reality check. Children are not born materialistic at all.
What's fascinating here is how the researchers describe early childhood cognition. They use this really beautiful term, an undifferentiated unified field.
A unified field.
Yeah. To a young child, there is absolutely no rigid boundary between what adults would categorize as the spiritual world and the material world.
I was trying to picture that while reading, and I like to think of it like a seamless tapestry.
That's a great way to put it.
Like if you watch a toddler splashing in a puddle after a rainstorm, they aren't just performing a physical material action. To them, that puddle is science.
Yes.
It is art.
Yeah.
It is pure joy.
Exactly. The raw materials of their awareness are all firing at once. And the research explicitly identifies those raw materials. Things like wonder, connection, imagination.
Sensory experience, right?
Yes. Sensory experience, fairness, curiosity, and emotional attunement. There is no split for them.
And those traits are the foundational building blocks for everything that comes later.
Precisely. A child naturally integrates inner meaning with outer reality. They don't look at a beautifully carved wooden toy and start calculating its market value.
Or wonder if it'll appreciate in 10 years.
Right, or check to see if the kid next door has a bigger one. They look at that toy and experience wonder, texture, and sensory connection. Balance is actually our baseline.
Okay, wait, so if we start out as this perfectly balanced, unified field, where does it all go wrong?
That is the million-dollar question.
Is it just an inevitable part of growing up that we lose that wonder and become obsessed with status?
Not inevitable at all. The data strongly suggests that the extremes we see in adults are entirely learned behaviors.
Learned behaviors?
Completely. A child only becomes materialistic through external forces. They absorb the modeling from the adults around them. They internalize broader cultural pressures. They react to underlying insecurities.
And they adapt to the reward systems we set up for them.
Exactly. The reward systems are huge. Alternatively, it's worth noting that they can also learn to become rigidly spiritual, which is its own unhealthy extreme.
Oh, right. Through fear or dogma.
Yes. Fear, dogma, or a total avoidance of the physical world. Both extremes are learned deviations from that natural, unified baseline.
So we essentially train them out of their natural state.
Unfortunately, yes.
And that brings us to a massive pivot point in the human lifespan, which is education.
Yes, education is the key here.
Because if a child begins life with this beautifully integrated experience of meaning and reality, education has to act as the guardian of that natural cognitive balance.
That's the ideal role of education.
And to be clear to you listening, when we say education, we aren't just talking about sitting at a desk in a classroom.
Right, it's not just schooling.
We are talking about the education at home, the school system, and the broader cultural messaging we're all steeped in.
Precisely. A healthy educational system, broadly defined, should protect and strengthen that natural integration. It has to help a developing person cultivate inner purpose and outer competence simultaneously.
But as we know, that isn't always what happens. The research draws a stark contrast between two very different educational paths.
Let's look at the first path.
Yeah, let's pause there because I want to visualize this. What does that first path look like? The one that pushes a child toward the extremes.
It happens when the environment severely overemphasizes external metrics.
Okay.
Think about a hyper-competitive schooling environment where the only thing that matters is getting the highest grade, beating the person next to you, and building a resume for a prestigious college starting from the age of 10.
Wow, yeah, we see that all the time.
The environment heavily rewards achievement, competition, consumption, and external validation. When a child is raised in that kind of system, it actively distorts their natural balance.
It pulls them out of that unified feel.
Exactly. It pulls them out of the wonder and fairness and traps them in a relentless cycle of performing for external rewards.
I see what you're saying. It's like we take their innate curiosity and replace it with a grading rubric.
That is exactly what happens.
But the alternative path detailed here looks entirely different. When an educational environment actively nurtures innate harmony, it measures success using completely different metrics.
Right. It prioritizes curiosity, empathy, reflection,
Cooperation, imagination.
moral reasoning, and a sense of broader purpose. And when you nurture those specific qualities, you are reinforcing the child's innate cognitive harmony.
You're preparing them for a completely different kind of life.
You're preparing them for a life where the material and spiritual dimensions of their existence work together rather than constantly competing for dominance.
That makes so much sense.
And the research makes a definitive statement here that we shouldn't overlook. A balanced education is not a nice optional add-on for a privileged few. It is the absolute safeguard of human purpose.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the transition from childhood development into adult identity is where materialism gets incredibly insidious.
It really does.
We need to move past the casual idea that materialism is simply liking nice things.
Right. There's nothing inherently wrong with nice things.
Enjoying a comfortable sofa, wanting a reliable car, or appreciating a good meal. That isn't the core issue here. The psychological definition provided in the research goes so much deeper.
It defines materialism as an entire value system.
It's almost like a distorted mathematical equation for how to live your life.
That equation metaphor is perfect. In a materialistic value system, the math looks like this. Your possessions equal your identity. Your success equals your external achievements. Your happiness equals your level of acquisition. And perhaps most dangerously, your worth equals your comparison to others.
When you lay it out like that, it sounds exhausting.
It is psychologically exhausting. And this brings us to what the researchers call the fragile self.
The fragile self.
Yes, because if your identity is inextricably tied to things you can lose, your job title, the balance in your bank account, your physical possessions, or your social status, your sense of self is constantly in jeopardy.
Because the external world is inherently unstable.
Exactly. You cannot control the economy, you cannot control corporate restructuring, and you cannot control the opinions of others.
Think about that for a second. Imagine you tie your entire identity to being a vice president at a major tech firm. That title is your worth.
Right.
Then a market shift happens and you get laid off.
Yeah.
If your equation is success equals external achievement, you haven't just lost a job. You have lost your actual self. The house of cards completely collapses.
Exactly. And the psychological fallout of this internal materialism is severe.
It really is.
The research lists the consequences, and they read like a diagnostic manual for modern society. Chronic anxiety, crippling insecurity, relentless social comparison, perfectionism, emotional instability, dissatisfaction, fear of failure, and ultimately a profound loss of meaning.
It becomes a psychological distortion. precisely because it replaces your innate inner worth with an external measurement.
Yes.
It's like waking up every single morning and stepping on a figurative scale to see if you matter today.
That's a chilling way to put it, but it's accurate.
But let me play devil's advocate for a moment here.
Sure.
What if you, as an individual listening right now, have done the inner work? Let's say you go to therapy, you meditate. You do not equate your worth with your possessions. You know you have intrinsic value.
Okay.
But you still have to wake up, commute, and navigate a society that operates on that distorted mathematical equation.
This raises an important question, and it is actually one of the most nuanced points in the research, because even if you are totally grounded internally, society still rewards competition.
Right. It still measures human worth economically.
It glorifies consumption, it pressures you to constantly perform, and it equates your visibility with your actual value.
That visibility piece is huge. Think about the pressure of maintaining a perfectly curated LinkedIn profile or an Instagram feed.
Oh, absolutely.
Society essentially signals that if you aren't visible, if you aren't constantly producing and consuming loudly, you don't count. The anxiety of just existing in that kind of world is incredibly heavy.
It is. And navigating that external pressure creates a very specific kind of friction. The researchers point out that even a spiritually grounded, non-materialistic person who happens to have wealth or influence will experience intense external anxiety in our current society.
But they differentiate the source of that anxiety, which is brilliant.
Yes, the distinction is key. For the internally materialistic person, they suffer from the anxiety of attachment.
The anxiety of attachment. Break that down for me, because the terminology they use here is fascinating.
The anxiety of attachment is the sheer terror of losing the things that make up your identity. Imagine someone who buys a luxury sports car, not because they love engineering, but because the car represents their status.
Right.
If someone scratches that car, they don't just see a damaged bumper, they feel a personal attack on their identity. They are attached to the object as a proxy for their soul.
That makes total sense. And what about the grounded person?
For the grounded person navigating wealth and societal pressure, what they feel is the anxiety of stewardship.
The anxiety of stewardship. That is such a heavy, powerful phrase.
Let's look at a concrete example. Imagine someone who inherits a family business.
Yeah.
They don't care about the fancy title, and their ego isn't wrapped up in being a CEO.
Right.
But they are awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, stressing about making payroll because they deeply care about their 50 employees.
Oh, I see.
They feel the responsibility stress, the fear of mismanaging resources that could help others, the weight of ethical concerns, and the immense social expectations.
It was a completely different psychological mechanism.
Exactly. You aren't afraid of losing your identity. You are stressed by the heavy responsibility of navigating a distorted system while trying to do the right thing.
That distinction changes everything about how you view the stress of modern professional life.
It really does.
Are you exhausted because you are clinging to your status? Or are you exhausted because you are trying to be a good steward in a broken system?
Spot on.
And this leads perfectly into how the researchers diagnose this illusion of self-sufficiency. There is an incredibly striking quote included in the text, drawn from the Baha'i writings, which provides a spiritual lens on the psychology of wealth.
It's a profound quote.
The quote is, "Wealth is praiseworthy in the highest degree if it is acquired by one's own efforts and the grace of God."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that quote perfectly deconstructs the modern ego. Look at the hyper-individualistic mindset we see everywhere today, especially in corporate culture.
Oh yeah, the whole hustle culture.
Exactly. It is built on phrases like, I am entirely self-made, or I built everything myself.
I alone must protect my empire.
My worth depends entirely on my hustle.
And if you operate from that mental framework, you are forcing yourself to carry the full, crushing weight of control. If you built it all yourself, there is zero safety net for your identity. It's entirely on you if it falls apart.
And as we've established, you cannot control the external world. Carrying that impossible weight is a one-way ticket to severe anxiety and burnout.
But look at the second half of that quote, and the grace of God. The Hale Institute research brilliantly translates that spiritual concept into psychological terms for us.
It does. Recognizing grace translates psychologically to humility, interdependence, and trust.
Yes.
It is the deep realization that you are not entirely in control, and frankly, you never were.
You didn't invent the language you use to negotiate your deals. You didn't pave the roads you drive on to get to the office.
Exactly.
You didn't single-handedly construct the global economy you participate in. You had teachers, mentors, and infrastructure that predated you.
When you acknowledge that when you lean into humility and interdependence, it completely dissolves the illusion of total self-reliance.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it dissolves the anxiety created by the isolated ego.
Because the burden is shared.
Right. You still put in the immense effort, as the quote notes, acquired by one's own efforts. But the outcome isn't solely on your shoulders. It frees you from the trap of the fragile self.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the research then moves into a section called the spiritual diagnosis.
Yes.
It draws on these vivid, visceral metaphors from the Baha'i writings to argue that materialism isn't just a simple moral failing. It isn't like forgetting to hold the door open for someone or cutting in line.
No, it acts as an active, destructive force.
The language they cite is striking. It describes materialism as a devouring flame. It calls it a disease that has attacked the soul of humanity, and it refers to it as a dark, impenetrable night.
Those metaphors carry a lot of weight, but they are incredibly precise descriptions of the psychological and societal symptoms we've been discussing.
Absolutely.
Think about how a disease operates within a body. It weakens the host by attacking its natural systems. Think about what walking into a dark, impenetrable night does. It immediately narrows your field of vision until you can only see what is directly in front of you.
It blinds you.
It does. The researchers explain that this condition paralyzes our higher faculties. It replaces a cooperative sense of shared purpose with cutthroat, zero-sum competition.
It blinds the heart to deeper meaning.
And it traps the human psyche in a perpetual state of fear, scarcity, and comparison.
It's shrinking us. That is the primary takeaway here. Materialism doesn't just distract us. It actively redefines human purpose into something vastly smaller than what we are capable of.
It's a reduction of the human experience.
Let's look at the three big substitutions the research identifies. First, it replaces identity with possessions.
Right.
Second, it replaces meaning with achievement. Let's talk about that one because it is massive. When you replace meaning with achievement, your purpose becomes entirely transactional rather than transcendent.
That is a critical insight. If your purpose is transactional, you only have value as long as you are actively achieving something measurable.
And the moment you stop producing, whether you retire, get sick, or just take a break, you lose your meaning.
You're left with nothing.
And the third substitution, it replaces service with competition. Human relationships stop being opportunities for connection, and they become arenas of comparison.
You stop asking, how can we help each other? And start asking, who have more?
Who achieved it faster? Who has the better title? When you look at those three substitutions, you see exactly how materialism shrinks the human being.
It takes that expansive, unified field of childhood wonder we talked about at the beginning and forces it into a tiny, fragile, highly anxious box.
So what does this all mean for you and me listening today? If we find ourselves trapped in this box, whether through our own internal equations or just the pressure of the society we live in, how do we break out?
The path back to purpose.
Exactly. The research naturally pivots to this path, and I want to be incredibly clear here because the insights are very specific. The true antidote to materialism is not poverty.
Right.
It is not moving to a cave, withdrawing from society, and rejecting the physical world.
That is a vital distinction. We so often fall into the trap of binary thinking. If materialism is bad, then having absolutely nothing must be the ultimate good. But that isn't true.
Right.
A person can be incredibly wealthy, hold significant influence, and be deeply grounded and spiritual. They can navigate the material world with grace, using their resources as a steward rather than clinging to them for identity.
And the reverse is also true.
Exactly. A person can live in absolute poverty and be deeply materialistic, consumed by the desire for acquisition, defining their entire worth by what they lack, and trapped in bitter comparison.
Which leads to what I think is the standout quote from this entire Hale Institute analysis. I'm going to say this twice because it deserves to be written on a sticky note and put on your bathroom mirror.
It's a powerful one.
The question is not what we possess, but what possesses us.
It is the defining metric of this entire deep dive. Are you steering your resources, or are your resources steering you?
Yes.
The path back to purpose, as outlined by the research, relies on three pillars to answer that question: detachment, service, and the recognition of grace.
Detachment ensures that your possessions don't possess you.
Right.
Service shifts your relationship with other people from a competitive arena back to a cooperative community.
Yes.
And recognizing grace, embracing that humility and interdependence we talked about, relieves you of the ego's isolating anxiety.
Which brings us right back to the beginning of the human lifespan. The ultimate fulfillment of human purpose is the integration and balance of the material and spiritual dimensions.
Finding that harmony again.
Yes, it is living a life guided by values that are higher than mere acquisition. This state of psychological health and integration isn't some impossible utopian dream. It is literally the natural baseline state of a developing child.
It is the highest aspiration of a mature adult, and it is the only stable foundation for a truly healthy society. It really is a profound full circle moment. We start whole with that unified field of wonder. We are taught by our environments and our cultures to fragment ourselves, to separate our worth from our being.
And our ultimate task is to consciously choose to integrate again.
To reclaim that wonder and connection, but this time not with the naivete of a child, but with the wisdom, agency, and intentionality of an adult navigating a complex world.
Well said. It is about choosing stewardship over attachment every single day.
And that brings us to the end of our journey today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of human purpose and these incredibly thought-provoking findings from the Hale Institute.
It's been a great discussion.
We covered a lot of ground today, from the psychology of a toddler splashing in a puddle to the anxieties of a CEO in a boardroom. And hopefully it gave you a new lens through which to view your own relationship with the material world.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own.
Go for it.
We talked extensively about how these developmental insights show that extremes, whether materialistic or rigidly dogmatic, are learned behaviors. They are driven by the reward systems we are exposed to.
Right.
So take a look at your own schedule tomorrow. As you move through your day, whether you are in meetings, scrolling on your phone, or talking to your family, ask yourself this: what subtle reward systems are currently operating in your daily life?
That's a great question.
Are your actions, your goals, and your interactions being driven by an innate sense of wonder, connection, and service? Or, if you look really closely, are you quietly performing for an external measurement of worth that you learned a long time ago?
Oh, that is a question that will absolutely stick with you. A massive thank you to our expert for the brilliant analysis today, and an even bigger thank you to you, the listener, for sharing your time and your curiosity with us. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for that balance, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.